Welcome to my channel.
Jake Martinez, a former U.S. Army officer, woke up to the blaring sound of sirens. His head throbbed, and the last thing he remembered was the evening news about meteorological anomalies. Pushing aside the green curtains in his bedroom, he looked outside. The streets of San Francisco, usually bustling with life, were now filled with chaos. People were running, screaming, and cars were blaring their horns in a frantic attempt to leave the city. Buildings appeared partially destroyed, their outl. People were running, screaming, and cars were blaring their horns in a frantic attempt to leave the city. Buildings appeared partially destroyed, their outlines blurred by a dense, fog-like cloud that carried a sharp chemical smell. Jake quickly got dressed, grabbed his pistol, and headed outside. His military training kicked in. The first thing he needed to do was assess the situation, then find shelter and resources. Navigating the streets, avoiding panicking crowds, he stumbled upon a family, a mother, father, and 2 young children. They were cornered by what looked like mutated dogs. Without hesitation, Jake took aim and eliminated the threat. "Thank you," the mother whispered, tears in her eyes. "We're the Hendersons. Do you know what's happening?" Jake shook his head. "Not yet, but we need to find a safe place." The small group found refuge in an old school building. Inside, they discovered several packs of dry food and water. It would be enough for a few days. In the evening, other survivors gathered in the school gymnasium. They exchanged stories about strange creatures, altered landscapes, and the fog that changed everything it touched. Jake realized that this post-apocalyptic world needed leadership and a plan. With a large board, he began organizing groups: scouts, resource gatherers, defenders, and medics. Over time, under Jake's guidance, a community started to form. With each passing day, more survivors arrived at the school shelter. Jake became the unofficial leader, and his military experience helped coordinate the community's efforts to make their shelter resilient to external threats. Maggie, a primary school teacher who happened to be in the shelter on the first day, supported Jake. She created a classroom where children could continue their education and find some semblance of normalcy in this new world. One evening, after another reconnaissance mission, a man named Chris approached Jake. He revealed that he had found a laboratory on the outskirts of the city that might hold answers to their questions about the fog and mutations. However, he couldn't get there alone. Taking a calculated risk, Jake assembled a small team of the most trustworthy individuals to go with him. The team included Chris, 2 others with military backgrounds, and Maggie, who insisted on joining due to her background as a biologist. The journey to the laboratory was fraught with danger. They encountered mutants, hostile survivor groups, and unpredictable natural phenomena. But, eventually, they reached their destination. The laboratory was in chaos: scattered papers, broken equipment, and strange substances in test tubes. Deep within the facility, they found a video recording. A scientist explained that they were experimenting with a new form of energy that they believed could be an endless source of power for the world. But something went wrong, causing the anomalies they were witnessing. Maggie found some records suggesting that antibodies to the fog could be developed, but they needed to find a rare plant that grew in only one place on Earth. Realizing the importance of their mission, the team decided to embark on a journey to find this plant and potentially save humanity. Recovering from the shock of the laboratory discovery, the team prepared for their new journey. According to the records, the plant they needed was in the Death Valley, a place with harsh climate and dangers. They knew that finding the plant would be like searching for a needle in a haystack, but they were humanity's last hope. The journey was arduous. They faced many obstacles: endless deserts, aggressive mutants, wild tribes trying to survive in the new world, and numerous other challenges. However, throughout the journey, their shared goal brought them closer together. Long days in the desert tested their resilience. One day, when they had almost lost hope, Maggie spotted something strange in the distance. It was a tiny oasis at the center of which grew a peculiar, glowing plant. It resembled a giant flower with transparent petals emitting a soft light. The team cautiously approached the plant. Jake recalled hearing legends about such a flower called the glowing lotus, but he had never thought he'd see it with his own eyes. They collected several samples and returned to the shelter. Using materials found in the laboratory and Maggie's tireless efforts, they created the antidote. The antidote worked. Those who took it began to return to normalcy. The city started to come alive again, and people believed they had a future. However, despite their successes, Jake knew the real struggle was just beginning. The world beyond the city was full of dangers, and to secure a safe future for all, they had to unite the remnants of humanity and restore order. While their shelter became a beacon of hope for many, Jake and his team decided to venture out in search of other surviving communities. Finding and uniting them was the key to rebuilding human civilization. Their first target was San Francisco. Information from the laboratory indicated the presence of a large shelter there. The journey was long and perilous, especially across ruined bridges and abandoned cities. When they arrived, they found the city in chaos. Various groups were vying for power, and life without laws and order had become chaotic and dangerous. On their way to the city's main shelter, they encountered numerous obstacles, but thanks to teamwork and the resources they brought with them, they managed to negotiate with the local leaders. After prolonged negotiations, it was decided to form an alliance between the two shelters. They exchanged resources, information, and knowledge and began working on a joint plan to restore order in the world. Meanwhile, Maggie started training local scientists on how to create. Studying maps and the information they had found, the team decided to head east. Their next target was New York, another major city that, according to rumors, had become a stronghold for survivors. With everything they needed for an extended journey, the team set out for New York. Each day, as they left the West Coast behind, they delved deeper into a devastated world. As they neared New York, the scene was bleak. Charred remnants of giant skyscrapers, streets buried in desert sand, and an eerie silence everywhere. In the city center, they discovered the main shelter, set up in one of the surviving skyscrapers. Here, they encountered a new problem, a group of survivors who believed that the old world and its civilization were cursed, and thus, they opposed any attempts at restoration. The leader of this group, Emily, was a charismatic woman who convinced her followers that the new world should be built from scratch, without technology and old methods. Jake and his team tried to persuade Emily that their plan for restoration could bring hope and a future for all. They shared stories of their successes in other cities and showed her the antidote. Finally, after lengthy negotiations and demonstrations of their achievements, Emily agreed to cooperate, but on the condition that old technologies would only be used for medical purposes and wouldn't be spread further. With a new ally and newfound hope, the team decided to head south to Washington, D.C., to try to find traces of the government and, possibly, answers to what had happened to the world. Once the team arrived in Washington, they realized that the city had suffered greatly from the catastrophe. Once mighty buildings were now mere shadows of their former glory. The White House lay in ruins, and only rubble remained at the site of the Capitol. They began their search in underground bunkers, hoping to find any documents or information about what had transpired. In one of these bunkers, they discovered archives containing extensive information about the last days before the catastrophe. Among the documents was a diary of a high-ranking official who detailed a strange illness spreading among the population and the government's attempts to create an antidote. While the team explored the archives, Maggie found a laboratory where experiments with the antidote had been conducted. Here, they found formulas and samples that could help improve the existing antidote. As they left Washington, Jake realized that their mission was far from over. There were still many cities in need of their help, and many mysteries remained unsolved. The road ahead was fraught with dangers, but armed with new information and resources, the team was ready to face it. The journey to the southern borders of the United States was filled with obstacles. The Texas deserts, once picturesque, had become deadly traps due to the intense heat and lack of water. On their way, they encountered bands of marauders attempting to take their resources and information. However, thanks to Jake and his team's combat skills, they managed to fend off the attacks. In one of the abandoned towns, they found a small group of survivors who told them about an oasis, a place where people could find water and shelter from the scorching heat. The oasis was said to be located somewhere in the heart of Texas and had become a legend among survivors. Determined to find this place, the team ventured deeper into the desert. After extensive searching and overcoming numerous challenges, they finally discovered the oasis. It was indeed an oasis in the desert, with sources of clean water and lush vegetation. Here, they decided to rest and prepare for their onward journey. Although the oasis seemed like a paradise at first glance, the team soon discovered that the place held its secrets. At night, they heard strange sounds coming from the depths of the desert, and they noticed that the local residents behaved suspiciously. One of the residents, an old man named Raoul, told them about an ancient curse that had been placed on this land. According to legend, in ancient times, the oasis contained a temple that housed a powerful relic. But when the locals tried to use it for their own purposes, desert spirits punished them, condemning them to an eternal curse. Jake and his team decided to investigate this legend and find the temple. After extensive searches and investigations, they found an underground sanctuary where the relic was kept. It was a crystal radiating incredible energy. Realizing that this crystal could be the key to restoring the world, they decided to take it with them. However, as they exited the temple, they were confronted by the local residents, who were determined to protect their sanctuary. A confrontation was inevitable. The oasis residents, believing in ancient curses, were willing to go to great lengths to protect the relic. But Jake and his team were well prepared and had the advantage of high-tech weaponry and equipment. The battle was fierce. Many of the oasis residents fell while trying to defend their land. But thanks to Jake's efforts and strategy, his team emerged victorious. Realizing that staying in the oasis would be dangerous, the team decided to leave the place. But before doing so, they helped bury the fallen and held a ceremony to honor their memory. They left the oasis with the crystal in their hands, understanding that it could be the key to saving humanity. However, the road ahead was long and full of dangers. As they moved north, the team decided to visit Detroit to gather supplies and possibly find those who could help with the crystal. The city was known for its industrial heritage. In one of the old factories, they encountered a group of survivors who had adapted to the new reality. These people were mechanics and engineers trying to restore old equipment to create a shelter for themselves and other survivors. Jake proposed cooperation, explaining the importance of the crystal. He hoped that with their help, they could create a device that would harness the crystal's energy to restore the world. The collaboration proved to be successful. Joining forces, Jake's team and the group of mechanics began working on the device. Many days and nights were spent in workshops, experimenting and testing various prototypes. Finally, after many failures and setbacks, they created a device that could convert the crystal's energy into electricity. It was a breakthrough, and Jake realized they had a chance to restore the world. With this device, they managed to restart old factories and breathe life back into the city. Detroit became the first city to be reborn after the apocalypse. Having restored Detroit, Jake and his team decided to spread their knowledge and technology to other regions of the country. They founded an organization with the goal of rebuilding the world. Soon, their efforts caught the attention of other groups of survivors, and they united for a common purpose. Together, they began constructing new cities, rebuilding infrastructure, and creating a new society. No matter how challenging it was, Jake and his team continued to believe in their mission and in the future of humanity. They knew that the world could be restored, and they were ready to fight for it to the end. With the rebirth of cities and the strengthening of their defensive structures, those who wanted to control them inevitably emerged. Conflicts between different factions ignited the flames of war. While Detroit, under Jake's leadership, became a symbol of hope and recovery, other cities became arenas of power struggles. The leader of one of these factions, General Logan, saw the crystal not only as a source of energy but also as an instrument of power. He wanted to seize the crystal to become an invincible ruler. Soon, Detroit found itself under siege. Logan's forces surrounded the city, preparing for a decisive assault. Despite the dire circumstances, Jake and his team decided to defend the city to the last. The battle began early in the morning. Logan's artillery rained fire upon the city walls, attempting to breach their defenses. However, the people of Detroit, thanks to the technologies created based on the crystal, held their ground. Realizing that direct resistance could lead to significant losses, Jake decided to employ guerrilla warfare tactics. His team launched ambushes and covert attacks against Logan's forces. The battle lasted for several days, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. But thanks to the determination and the will to protect their home, the people of Detroit managed to repel the attack and force Logan's forces to retreat. After the battle for Detroit, Jake decided that it was time to unite the surviving cities and form a new government capable of standing against aggressors like Logan. With this idea in mind, he reached out to the leaders of other cities. Through numerous hardships, they managed to create a united front against the enemies of humanity. Thanks to their efforts, a new world began to awaken from the ashes of the old. The era of destruction and chaos was left behind, paving the way for a new beginning for humanity.